بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Assalamu alaikum. It is Monday, the 14th of June 2021, and the Lahore Ahmadiyya community brings you its broadcasts, reflections on the Quran. And this is broadcast number 221 in that series. And for the last few days, we've been discussing chapter 2, verse 87, and this is the sixth broadcast in that series. Just to introduce you to the Lahore Ahmadiyya community, which was created by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, he taught us that although some people want to bring an old prophet and some people want to bring a new prophet after the Holy Prophet Muhammad, the Holy Quran says that the Holy Prophet was Khatmun Nabiyyin, and the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this means La Nabi Abadi. There is no prophet after me. Now, no prophet can now come, whether an old one or a new one. And then people raise this question, asking what will happen when people go astray. Amongst the Israelites, prophets used to appear to show people the way back to the right path. What will happen to Muslims? And the Holy Prophet Muhammad said that Mujaddadeen, reformers, will come, who will now undertake this task. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said that he was one such reformer, but his distinction was that the Messiah and Mahdi spoken of in the Hadith were actually titles for a Mujaddid, and he was that Mujaddid. And that was what was written on his tombstone. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, chief of Qadian, Mujaddid of the 14th century of Hijrah, the promised Messiah and Mahdi. And he also pointed out that differences of opinion on these things is not something that should drive us to call each other heretics and kafirs and out of the fold of Islam and so on. He always pointed to what the Holy Prophet Muhammad said. The Holy Prophet said, if one reciter of the kalima says to another reciter of the kalima that you are a heretic, you are not Muslims, then this judgment of heresy falls upon the person who says. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad also told that people say some prophetic revelation. Some say Ayah Rajam, some say Surah Wal-Ayat, have been left out of the Holy Quran. He said this is impossible. All prophetic revelation that Gabriel brought to the Holy Prophet Muhammad is in the Holy Quran in the form that we have it. Muslims also said, well, they still say, that some verses of the Holy Quran are abrogated. Hazrat Shah Waliullah Sahib Rahmatullah Alayhi said that people say that up to 512 verses of the Holy Quran are abrogated. But I have done extensive research and reduced it down to 7. But Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, Maulana Muhammad Ali, and elders of and founders of this organization said no verse of the Holy Quran was, is, or ever shall be abrogated. Similarly, and this was one of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib's reforms, he pointed out that people think that jihad means grabbing some non-Muslim and throwing him to the ground, and unless he recites the kalima, killing him. As he always did, he pointed to the example of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. He said the Holy Prophet Muhammad, when he was returning from fighting, said, from the minor jihad, we now return to the major jihad. And people said, what is that major jihad? And he said, that is jihad with our own selves. Because ourselves tend to lead us astray. The jihad is a duty of every Muslim. No one can abrogate that. But you must understand the correct interpretation and meaning of jihad. We agree that if someone attacks you with a gun or the sword, there's no point in making an eloquent speech about how wrong it is to kill humanity. If he cared about that, he wouldn't have attacked you in the first place. So you have to respond in kind. But when attacks are of an intellectual nature, when it's articles and speeches and so on, then you respond in the same way. Let us now turn to the Holy Quran. And as I said, it's chapter 2, verse 87, and this is the 6th broadcast in that series. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد آتينا موسى الكتاب وكفينا من بعده بالرسل وآتينا عيسى ابن مريم البينات وأيدناه بروح القدس أفكلما جاءكم رسول بما لا تهوى أنفسكم مستكبرتم ففريقا كذبتم وفريقا تقتلون. And certainly we gave Moses the book and sent messengers after him, one after another. And we gave Jesus, son of Mary, clear arguments and strengthened him with the Holy Spirit. Is it then that whenever there comes to you a messenger with what your souls desired not, you were arrogant, and some of you gave the lie to, and others you would reject. So today we are going to look at 2 words, ayyadna and ruh. So let us turn to that. I can find my notes. I have to apologize, my notes were in a mess. Right. Okay. The first word, the root is Hamza Ya Dal, what you call Alif in Urdu. And we find it in the Holy Quran 11 times with two meanings, or two words derived from these three characters. One is Ayyada, and that occurs 9 times, and the other one is Ayyid. Ayyid. Second one is a noun, and the first one is a verb. And basically, it means to support, to help, to strengthen, as it says in chapter 3, verse 13, Wallahu yuwayyadu. Allah supported him. Or in chapter 5, verse 110, is ayyadtuka bi ruhil qudus. Bil ruhil qudus tukallamun nasa fil mahdi wa kahlan. I strengthened you, I made you strong. And the other form, if it's al aidi, then it's the possessor, the one who is strong. And bi aidin is strength itself. So, as I said, it means al aidu means great strength. In ayyada, that means to support someone. For example, chapter 5, verse 110, I think I may have just recited that. Ayyatuka bi ruhil qudus. And I, or we, supported you with Ruhul Qudus. Chapter 3, verse 13. Whoever he wants to, Wallahu yu'idu bi nasrihi man yasha. Chapter 3, verse 13. It is up to Allah. Whomsoever he wills, he will strengthen and support. And of course, the chapter 51, verse 48, وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ. Chapter 51, verse 48. And then it was with great strength that we created the heavens. And then from that we have the word mu'id, mu'ayyadun. And this is a word of Urdu as well, something that supports someone else. So let us now go to the next word, which is ruh, and that is its root, ra, ba, ha. Occurs in the Holy Quran 57 times with 6 different meanings. And 29 times is the noun rih, 21 times as the noun ruh, and then you have rihan, etc. Rawah, and so on. And this takes us to my oft-repeated moan, and that is that we've taken a word of Arabic and we've taken it into Urdu and we've given it one meaning only. And then if someone else points out that it has other connotations, other meanings, we get all very upset. But, and this is one such word. When we talk about ruh, we think it's the soul or the spirit or whatever you want to call it. But that is inside us, that is released when we die, and that is the end of the story. But it has a huge range of meanings. You have Ra Hamza and Ra Va. With Hamza or Alif, you have Rahatan. Rahatan. Rahat. It's a word of Urdu. Means to make happy and so on. Rahatan. Istirahatan. Again, this is a common word of Urdu. It means to rest. Tarwihatan. Rayhan. Now, Rah with the Hamza, Ra, Hamza, Ha. It refers to the wind blowing and the pleasure that induces. You know, it's a hot day and, it's stifling. There's no airflow. And then suddenly you get a bit of breeze. And it's very pleasing. So all the words that are made from this root, they have basically the same meaning in all different forms. And experts in Arabic and Arabic dictionaries and so on say that its basic meaning is vastness and generosity. For example, ar-ruh means happiness. It also means mercy, blessing, means vastness. And ar-rihan, it means victory, overcoming something, revolution, changing of times. 1 minute you are powerful and whatever, and then next minute you've lost everything. The Holy Quran says in chapter 8, verse 26, فَتَذْهَبَ رِيحَكُمْ, and your wind will change, or you will lose wind. This is like, when the ships are sailing with sails and so on, and if you lose your wind, then you lose your strength. And tarwihatan, that's rest. And in fact, if in Tarawih, most people sit for a minute or two after 4 rakahs, and the same word is used. Why? because you've been fasting all day and you're saying Tarawih and you get tired. So you get this chance to get a bit of rest. So, it pleases you. Ar-rawihatu, that is, if you've been financially strained, didn't have much money, and then you become well off, applies to that. Rahatan, that is the time when cattle are herded back. Ar-rawahan, that is the time from when the sun begins to set to when it becomes dark. So one expert in Arabic has taken ar-ruhun and he's translated that it stands for happiness, contentment, mercy, blessings, cool breeze, help. And he says that it even stands for justice. So if some petitioner who's been hard done by someone else petitions a judge and the court gives a decision in his favor, then this expert says that this word applies to that as well. And ar-ruh is generally taken to mean our soul. Something that is said is in us. But the Holy Quran uses this in many different ways. For example, in chapter 16, verse 2, I think, it says, يُنَزِّلَ الْمَلَائِكَةَ بِالرُّوحِ. And some people say that this ruh spoken of here is God's revelation. Similarly, in Surah Shura, it says, وَكَذَلِكَ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ رَوْحًا مِنْ أَمْرِنَا. So here, some people say that Rohan stands for the Holy Quran. And similarly, in chapter 17, this is I suppose, in a very interesting discussion, that in chapter 17, verse 85, when the Quran says, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ فَلِلرُّوحِ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. They ask you about what is ruh. Tell them it's a command. Tell them that a ruh is a command from my Lord. And some people say that, well, if that's the case, then this cannot be our soul or spirit or whatever you want to call it in English. But it must mean God's revelation, because that is what his command is, how his command is given. And then it carries on. أوحينا إليك. That is to say, well, they want to understand the nature of what it is, nature of Wahi. So some people say, well, what it means is that because people can't experience Wahi, you and I, we can't experience this. in a limited way, like the Holy Prophet Muhammad said, you might get a true dream or something like that. But the kind of wahi the Holy Prophet was receiving and Hazrat Musa was receiving, we cannot conceive of that. That is something that is totally beyond our experience and capability and ability. So these people say, well, God is saying these, you want to know the nature of God's revelation, what it is. So it's saying, tell them that they cannot, because it's not something of this world. But then, having said that, of course, you will notice that we have interpolated certain ideas to make sense of this theory. But certainly, the main principle remains: what is wahi, what is how it is received, how God sends it, connection between God and His prophets, and so on. These are things we cannot understand. They are beyond our capacity. And the same thing happens in this life. If I was to ask a heart specialist, explain to me how you do a heart transplant, you take one heart out and put another one in. Even if he explains it, I may sit there looking very intelligent and shaking my head, yes, 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 and desperately trying not to make some stupid comment. But I'm not going to understand the real nature of what he's trying to say and do, because this is all outside my experience. So in chapter 2, verse 87 that we are talking about, where it says Ruhul Qudus, that was supporting Jesus. Some say it was the Holy Spirit, Gabriel. And others say, well, no, God was sending him his revelation to support him, to show the Israelites that God spoke to him and he was God's chosen and he was being guided by God. And some say no, it was the angel Gabriel. And another expression is Ruhul Amin, chapter 26, verse 193, in Surah Shura, where it said, Nazala bihir Ruhul Amin ala qalbi. So Ruhul Amin is Hazrat Jibreel, Gabriel, the Holy Spirit. So, but later on we'll see that in verse 97, Jibreel, about Jibreel it is said, فَإِنَّهُ نَزَلَهُ عَلَىٰ قَلْبِكَ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ, that by Allah's permission, He descends on the heart. So people argue from that Ruhul Amin, Ruhul Qudus, all of them refer to the Holy Spirit or Gabriel, etc. Now, the word Malaika has also been used, but for angels in general. Here we were just talking about Hazrat Jibreel or Gabriel. But the interesting thing is that although I was unable to find anywhere that God talks about human ruh. What God actually says is that God breathed into humans his ruh. In chapter, I think, is it 33, verse 9? Something like that. And then what happened was, as a result of that, people were able to see and hear and gather knowledge, and the man was given a heart. Now, you see, all living things have many similarities, and science defines what those are. But then you have living things, as in what you might call, plants and so on, and then you have living things as animals. And humans are a part of the animal side of this thing. Now, we know that animals can see, we know that animals can hear. And so, what is the difference? God says that I gave humanity, human beings, the ability to see and hear. And that is an animal. You see, animals have feelings as well. They can be sad, they can feel pain, and they can cry. This is not exaggeration. If you go and look at documentaries and so on, you will see tigers and lions and so on crying in pain because something's hurt them. And we have that hadith by the Holy Prophet Muhammad when he saw a person slaughtering some animal in front of others, and he told him off, saying that animals can see and feel. So have some consideration for their feelings. But so what's the difference? The difference is that when humans see something or hear something, they're able to analyze that. They're given knowledge and qalb, or intellect, let's say. And that allows us to look at things and draw our conclusions. And that allows us to make a decision between right and wrong. Now, this ability to actually consciously decide to do something that is wrong is only with human beings. No other animal can do that. Only human beings. As I said earlier on, the Holy Quran, I haven't found the word human soul or human spirit. God says it's my spirit that I breathed into you. And so what is that? This is what what Sufis called is your self, with a capital S. And that self is what God's revelation tries to develop. Because we die, and this soul or this self that remains behind or passes on to another form of life that we don't know and we don't understand. The example I usually give, or one of the examples, is that you have a shell and you have a chicklet inside the shell. And when the time comes, it breaks the shell and comes out. And it's the same thing, that whatever it is, whatever name you want to give it, what God breathed into us, or whatever, just like the chicklet broke the shell, it breaks the shell and comes out. It could be just your intellect remaining, could be your character that remains. We don't know what it is. So this is a very broad, a very wide topic. But as I said, that unfortunately, in some countries, we've limited the use of the word to one thing, and that is all, nothing else. Just as an aside, Rihan is another use of this root, and it means sort of scented plants, grass, trees, etc. So, with that, I take my leave of you with the prayer that whoever you are and wherever you may be, may Allah keep all of you under His wing, regardless of what your nationality is, what your color is, what your religion is, or what your sect is. May He look after the whole humanity. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, and goodbye.